brother, everybody. So raise your hand if you like time changes. Time changes. Yeah. I have to admit, I like it once we're on it. In about a week, I'll be happier that I get off work and there's still time to mow the grass, which needs to be mowed twice a week now. But the transition to this time is not so pleasant. Okay, well, we are continuing our Sermon on the Mount study, and so we'll be turning to Matthew chapter 5. Boy, what an interesting study. As a person who's often led discussions, sometimes I complain that, man, Casey, you don't give us enough time. You make us cover way too much material in one given Bible class, and so now he's allowed us to slow it down and only cover 4 verses in one Bible class. And I'm going, man, Casey, how am I supposed to fill the time? And yet, the Sermon on the Mount is such a rich, deep well of learning from our Lord that it just allows you to launch into so many areas of the Bible. And so we will actually be doing that today. And I honestly don't know if we're going to get through the 4 verses we're supposed to cover today. So John, you may have to do it next week. I'm just kidding, brother. Okay. We'll start by just reviewing the whole thing from context. Starting in Matthew 5, verse 1 through 12. Now when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way, they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And so we're going to be focusing on verses 5 through 8, but always good to glean from the context. And so we call this section the Beatitudes. Now, Jan and I were studying with a young lady many years ago, and she looked at that word and she said, well, let's talk about the Beatitudes. Why wouldn't you say it like that? How do you get beatitude out of Beatitudes? Anyway, that was kind of fun. But a beatitude, or a beatitude, however you want to say it, reflects supreme blessedness or utmost bliss. What's interesting about this word is, and unrelated to the definition, is that when we read it, we quickly see that these can be attitudes that we should have. Attitudes that we want to have, and they reflect the people we want to be. So, in a way, just coincidentally, these are be attitudes. Be like these, have these attitudes. Blessed is often rendered happy, and more for our use here, maybe we think of it as fortunate or enviable. But when you read some of these, it's like, is this a mature kind of happy we're talking about? I mean, this is way different than, I'm so happy that I get to have ice cream and cake on my birthday. It's not that kind of happiness, is it? I mean, after all, who can be happy about being poor or persecuted or hungry or thirsty? And yet there's something in here which allows 2 guys who've been beaten up. Yes, Kathy?
Maybe we're not happy about being all of those negative lists,
Happy in spite, so not happy about necessarily being those things, but happy in spite of them. So here we're starting to kind of dig down into attitude, right? An outlook, a state of mind, right? So whatever this happiness, whatever this blessedness, yes, Alan?
What he gives us is because, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Sure.
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Yeah.
So, I will not disagree with my sweet wife. I'm going to go home.
You may be walking, though.
I think that instead of in spite of, it's because. Blessed are the poor in spirit because there is, although it says for.
Well, it's that type of form where we say because, right? Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it's there's something that's going to happen because this is how you're doing or what. So back to these guys here in a Philippian jail. They've just been beaten. And they're, at midnight, they do something really strange while they're chained together in a jail. And, I can just imagine that conversation. Hey, Silas, wouldn't you rather be sitting on a beach in Cyprus right now? Hey, Paul, wouldn't you rather be racing camels down the Jordan River Valley right now? And they both look at each other and go, no. I'm right where I'd like to be, suffering and being persecuted for the name of Christ. And they start singing, and something very miraculous happens from that. But is it not that type of outlook, that type of attitude maybe, that allows one to rejoice and be worthy, rejoice for being worthy of suffering for the name of Christ? Maybe you're there yet, maybe you're not there yet, maybe you're on the journey, but maybe we can all agree that these Beatitudes are things that we would like to have in increasing measure. That these reflect the people we'd like to be. So, promise we will get into verse 5 in just a minute, but what do we think of when we hear blessing or blessed or blessed? What comes to mind, just in general?
Good things.
Good things, sure. What else?
Rewards.
Yeah, good things, reward. Certainly those are kind of tied together. And there's nothing wrong with getting a reward. I mean, having these things in this list, there's a lot of reward. You poor people are going to inherit a kingdom. How many kings have you ever heard of that are just poor? It's antithetical. Yeah, Alan. One. Right, the king of the earth who was homeless, didn't own property, probably didn't have a bank account. Yeah, no place to lie his head down. Yeah. Lorelei.
I guess for me it kind of carries an unexpected or unmerited gift, like.
Unexpected, unearned gift. We call that, we have a G word for that, right?
Yeah.
Grace. God's unmerited favor. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Gail. No, it's yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to take a drink with this and this. It's going to be interesting. So yeah, blessing. We also think of, oh Father, give me a blessing too. Don't you have a blessing for me? What was that about?
Giving his away.
The birthright, right? The firstborn son. He'd forsaken it, right? Esau, Jacob. Yeah. So when we think of blessing, we think of that. What about another way we use blessing?
What?
Another way that we use blessing that I can think of is, we're in the habit, and it's a good habit, of having a prayer before a Thanksgiving, before we have a meal. And so sometimes we'll say, we'll ask the blessing. And we're being thankful for the blessing we're about to receive, right? Which is food in abundance. So we think of blessed or blessing, we think of these things, we think of being fortunate and having something turn out good. Okay. Well, perhaps the blessings that we're going to talk about here in the Beatitudes are not necessarily what we would think of. Like, right now, and this is exactly what I thought in getting this blessed of being poor or meek or what have you. So let's look at verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now this one, I spent a lot of time on this one, and so we're going to have to speed up a little bit. Because meek is a word that we just really don't use a whole lot. In fact, it doesn't occur very many times in the Bible. But what is meek? Yes, Alan?
I've been waiting for this word.
Oh, okay.
In W. Vine's Expository Dictionary of New Testament Greek Words, because I like to stay out.
I think I have that book somewhere.
But if you look up meek, it says, this word doesn't occur in English. It says the word we want is restrained power. Jesus was meek. He wasn't on the cross because he had to be. He could have called 10,000 angels, but he did not. He chose not to. This is meek. It's not a weak person who's getting beat up because he has no other choice. And we are not beat up because we have no other choice, hopefully. We choose to turn the other cheek because Jesus said so. It's meek.
Yeah, that's definitely a definition of meek that really, unfortunately, a lot of people when they hear meek, they hear weak. And that's not what is implied. This idea Alan said about strength under control, right? It's something like Jesus on the cross. He could have called 10,000 angels. He could have smote them with the blink of his eye, and yet he chose not to. Exercised great restraint. And we'll find that things like meekness are often combined with other virtues or positive qualities of an individual. So yes, very good. We'll get back into how Jesus was meek in a little bit. But yes, some versions translate this humble. We think of when Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. Take my yoke upon you, for I am humble and gentle in heart, or meek and lowly in heart, right? We have a song that we sing about that sometimes. So meekness, strength under control, is humility. It's not boastful or prideful, but it has the flavor of being confident in one's identity. And certainly Jesus was that, confident in his identity as a Son of God. So who else do we know in the Bible who is meek? And I have one particular character I'd like to spend some time on. But who do we know from the Bible who is meek, who said that is meek, besides Jesus?
His mother.
Yeah, don't we have a song about that? Mary, the mother of Jesus. I am the Lord's servant, right? This young girl who's going to bear the Christ child. And then, Moses is the one I want to talk about. Yeah, Frank, you have that? What? Timothy. Okay. Paul's son in the faith. Yeah. David occasionally. Well, absolutely, actually. I was thinking of Moses. And the reason I think of Moses is because it's kind of a direct quote. Let's look at Deuteronomy 34:10. And this is where we're going to kind of do some Bible flipping. Deuteronomy 34:10. It says of Moses, this is kind of at the end of, it looks like the book's been finished out after Moses has passed on the mountain. I'll start in verse 9. Now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those miraculous signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all the officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. You think about Moses' life. Wow, it was amazing. Yet, if we go to Numbers chapter 12, getting some Pentateuch time in Numbers chapter 12. So we don't read this whole thing, but this is a section where your Bible probably says Miriam and Aaron opposed Moses. And so we'll look at verses 1 and following. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Parenthetical notation here in verse 3. Now Moses was a very humble, and some versions say meek there, a very meek man, more meek than anyone else on the face of the earth. And so the Lord steps in and berates Miriam and Aaron for standing up against Moses. Interesting that the Bible points out he was the meekest man in all the earth. We certainly don't think of Moses as being weak. Moses had a very exceptional relationship with God, and yet God also judged him pretty harshly, right? He would not allow him to enter the promised land, but he did say to him, look, you can go up on the mountain, you can look north, south, east, and west, and look at all the land, but you yourself cannot enter because you did not show me respect. And so look at Exodus chapter 33. Exodus chapter 33, 12 through 23. And notice the interaction between Moses and the Lord. Moses said to the Lord, you have been telling me, lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways, so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people. Look at the humility before God there. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Then Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? Look at the complete reliance upon God there. And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name. Who did the Lord ever have this discourse with? Maybe others. I don't know. I don't know from the Bible. Then Moses said, now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and compassion on whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see my face and live. Then the Lord said, there's a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but you may not see my face. A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord. He hides my soul in the cleft of the rock. It says there was no one else like Moses who was meek in this way. What do you observe, just from these few passages, and there are others? What do you observe about Moses, Josh?
This is kind of related, but I think it's interesting, Jesus quoted, the meek will inherit the earth as a meek will inherit the land. Mm-hmm. And we have this example of Moses, kind of literally being referred to as meek, but he actually didn't inherit the land.
He didn't get to, but the people did.
Yeah. I think that also tells you that maybe it's not talking about literal land, right? It's talking about the promise of God. I think Moses still definitely inherited the promise of God, even though we get to see it on this earth. And maybe that's kind of the message of the Sermon on the Mount, really, too.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about that. What happens here and now? What do we look forward to? I mean, you think about Moses, and you think about how he led those people for 40 years in the desert, right? And you think about there were times when he was so frustrated with them, and God was so frustrated with him, and God says, "Get out of the way, Moses. I'm going to wipe these people out. I'm going to create a new nation for you." And Moses says, "No, God. Then people will hear that you did this. That you just led your people out from Egypt into the desert to die." And so it's just an interesting thing how Moses could be so direct with God. We don't want to be disrespectful toward our Creator. Be so direct with God, and God didn't smite him. That he tolerated it and listened to him. Just amazing. Somehow Moses was meek. Okay, we have to step on the gas on meekness here. But one other very important thing, we talked about Jesus being meek and gentle and humble and lowly in heart. We have that great passage in Philippians chapter 2, 3 through 11, where Jesus emptied himself, right, and left the throne of glory and made himself nothing, taking the very form of a servant, right? We go to that passage a lot. Jesus in his humility and meekness, and yet Jesus also who, in his anger did not sin, but his anger drove him to drive out the money changers of the temple. How was Jesus meek? Well, how was he not? So many ways. He wasn't rich. He was homeless from what we knew. Came from a very poor family. You'll recall Mary and Joseph didn't have anything, right? There was the turtle dove pigeon offering, right? It wasn't a huge offering when he was born that they made to the Lord. Constantly being challenged, Jesus was, by the religious Jewish establishment in the garden, trials before Herod and Pilate, on the cross, meek. Am I? Are you? Are we meek? Something to think about. Yeah, Josh, inherit the earth. Is it figurative? Is it now? Is it later? I guess it'd be great to own the earth. It's going to be great to be with God, though. And so I'll continue, and maybe you will to continue to wrestle with, well, what exactly does the meek will inherit the earth mean? But it is nonetheless an attitude we should possess, meekness. Okay, verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Besides food and drink, what do people hunger and thirst for today? That was on my list, power. And you know what? We actually, when we're thinking of hungry and thirsting here, it's a lust. It's a lust for power, right? Security. Maybe not a lust for security, but yeah, we desire security. We hunger and thirst for it. Sure. What else do people hunger and thirst for?
Acceptance.
Say again?
Acceptance.
Acceptance.
Being accepted for who they are, what they've done.
We naturally do not want to be cast out in society, do we? Yeah, acceptance. What else do people hunger and thirst for? Some things on my list, sure. Power, fame, pleasure, satisfaction, money, affection, attention, thrill. You know any thrill seekers? They'll jump off anything, whether something's attached or not. Thrill seekers. Some people hunger and thirst for drugs.
Did you say knowledge?
Knowledge. I did not say knowledge. Oh, that's kind of more pure, isn't it?
What do you think about like knowing the Bible, like how helpful that is, or the desire to go to college, better prove yourself in college?
Yeah. Hunger and thirst for knowledge, not a bad thing, for truth. And I think that's kind of where we're going with this beatitude, John. Here was an interesting one. Let's go to Revelation chapter 7, 9 through 17. This one I'd forgotten about this one, if I'd ever remembered it. This is an interesting one. Revelation 7, 9 through 17. I won't read the whole thing there, but just for the sake of time, starting in verse 9. Revelation chapter 7, 9 through 17. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." Kind of reminiscent of the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, maybe. All the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders, and the four living creatures, they fell down and they worshiped before the throne and worshiped God. And I want to jump down to, verse 16. So that's the context there, right? People in white robes, palm branches. Never again will they thirst, never again will they hunger, never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat upon them, nor any scorching heat. So what caught my eye there is that this is the picture of those who are righteous. They're wearing white robes. Maybe these people have hungered and thirsted for righteousness in their life here on earth, and now their hunger and thirst is filled. Turn to John 6:35. John 6:35. We won't read the greater context starting in verse 25, but Jesus is the bread of life, and in 6:35 he says, "I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never go hungry, and he who believes in me will never be thirsty." If you come to Jesus and you're hungry, you'll be filled. If you believe in Jesus and you're thirst, you will thirst no more. You remember the story in John 4? You can go ahead and flip back a page or two there. Jesus and the woman at the well, Jacob's well. She's Samaritan, right? She's come there at noon, high noon, hot part of the day to draw water. "Give me a drink," Jesus says to her. She's shocked. Verse 10, Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Hungering and thirsting for righteousness. What do we desire? It would be pretty convenient. I mean, we do enjoy a good meal, right? Nice glass of iced tea on a hot summer day. Doesn't that sound good? And yet, wouldn't it be kind of nice if you didn't have to? Some of us are so go, go, go. We don't have time for food and drink, right? But this is talking about something else. It's talking about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness because somehow they will be satisfied. Now, this one I think we can look at and go, well, that can be here and now. Right? And maybe tomorrow, because I'm meek, I'm not inheriting the earth yet. But hungry and thirsting for righteousness and being filled seems to be something that can happen pretty imminently. And I would encourage you to encourage me to hunger and thirst for righteousness. Any other thoughts? Hungering and thirsting. Laura Lee.
It's not something you can buy, the righteousness of God. You have to look at a different way for it, and it's free. But
Yeah, you can't buy it, you can't pay for it,
but it's so satisfying.
Yeah, and maybe if we enhance our humble qualities, maybe that helps us hunger and thirst for what we really, truly, what our real desire of our heart is, which really is to be reconciled to our Creator. Alan.
John mentioned knowledge. There's a long-deceased preacher I respected right well I'd give half my life to know the Bible like you do. He said, thought about it, said, that's about right.
It might take half your life, huh? And the more you learn, the less you know. But hopefully you understand better. Verse 7. Back in Matthew 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Jan and I were talking about this one yesterday. Each one of us wants mercy, but does each one of us want to give it? There's some amazing stuff in the Bible on mercy. I like to do these word searches on my Bible app. I think I got 123 hits in the Bible on the word mercy. But what is mercy? Is it tied to forgiveness? We're going to go to Matthew 18 a little bit. We're going to see, oh yeah, mercy is tied to forgiveness. But what is mercy? How would you define it?
Like grace, undeserved.
Like grace, undeserved. We think grace is God's undeserved or unmerited favor. I get something good, and there's no way I could earn it. Many years ago, we were on a college retreat. We went to Whidbey Island, and I remember the speaker there. It was on grace. The theme of the weekend was, and I remember this quote from him. It's just very interesting. He says, I want to tell you the difference between justice, mercy, and grace. Let's just suppose you're on your way here to retreat, and you've been speeding too much. Officer pulls you over. You've been speeding too much. That's silly. You've been speeding, you've been caught. And officer pulls you over. Justice is you get a ticket. You broke the law, you're going to pay, right? Mercy is he lets you off. He doesn't give you a ticket. Grace is he lets you off, gives you a box of chocolates and says, have a nice day. For some reason, that stuck with me throughout the years, and maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not, but maybe it does kind of define. Yeah, mercy is, okay, I'm not going to give you what you deserve. Grace is, yeah, you're not getting what you deserve, instead I'm going to give you my son. I'm going to forgive you. And we're going to see some of that here in an example here in a minute in the Bible, in Matthew 18. But Jan and I were talking about this yesterday, and what are everyday examples of mercy? And I've thought about one. A year ago, when we were all allowed to see the lower half of someone's face in public, I would get merged on the Highway 20 in the morning, and if I didn't hit it just right, like between 7:25 and 7:30, boy, there was a long line of cars coming, and I needed to merge left, and so very busy coming both directions, but a lot of people come from Albany to Corvallis. And it struck both Jan and I that invariably we'd sit there for a little bit and someone would allow a gap to open and then flash their lights and honk their horn and wave, hey, you can jump out in front of me. And I don't know how many times that happened a year ago and before. You can get out pretty much anytime you want now. But I thought, wow, there's something merciful going on here, and I wonder why that person did that. Maybe someone up the road did the same for them. I don't know, but you think about that. Traffic, it's aggravating. You think about you're in a long line of cars on I-5, and someone's coming onto an on-ramp, or they know the lane is ending, but they're going to be that person that rushes up to the front of the line, passes a mile of cars that have been waiting in line, and then here comes the turn signal, and they're going to force themselves in. And you know what? You know what they deserve? You to take your big stomping 4x4 with a big old brush guard on it and just kind of bump them off the road. But that's not what you do, because you're a Christian driver in a big stomping 4x4 with a brush guard. And you roll your eyes and you tap your brakes and you let them in.
That's also meek, by the way.
That's meek. Because you could crush them. yeah, that's also meek. But look at Matthew chapter 18, seriously. And you can think about, these are very practical things that we can do where you got to take a deep breath you got to say, you know what, that's been me on an occasion or two. What am I going to do? It's the parable of the unmerciful servant, and notice that it follows this section of someone who sins against you, right? And we're all pretty familiar with the parable of the unmerciful servant. This is someone who owns a lot of money to the king. 10,000 talents in verse 24. And the guy can't pay. So everything he has, he's supposed to be enslaved, all his possessions sold, and somehow that's going to not even touch the debt he owes. But that's what's going to happen, and the servant does what? Falls on his knees. Oh, please, just give me some time and I will pay it back. And for some reason, the master says, you know what? No, just get out of here. Your debt is canceled. So what does that servant do? Goes out and rejoices and does so much good to everyone he meets, right? Wrong. He goes out and finds someone who owes him 100 denarii. A denarius was a laborer's daily wage, right? 8, 10, 12 hours of work, you get a denarius. 100 days of work. Half a year. That's a lot of money. If someone owed you that kind of money, you might think, well, you're the reason I can't pay back my master. And so starts to throttle him. Pay it back now. Throws him in jail. And the people of his master heard about this, and the ultimate master says, you are a wicked servant, in verse 32. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had on you? In anger, his master turned him over to the jailer to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. And this is a catching one, verse 35, Matthew 18. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart. So what's in it for me? What's in it for you in this mercy thing? Alan.
That from your heart part is pretty important.
From your heart is pretty important.
It's not just for show, it's from inside. It's not so everybody will see, it's because it's right.
It's genuine. So what does it take to have this kind of mercy?
Practice.
Say again.
Practice.
Proactive.
Practice.
Practice.
Children don't grow up knowing this stuff. You have to teach them, and they have to exercise it when they're old enough that they can to learn how to make it part.
We need to teach our children this.
To teach ourselves this.
We need to observe this from each other, teach each other, yes. What else does it take to have this kind of attitude? And this is said a lot in the Bible, right? If you want mercy, you better be a merciful person. Ah, darling.
It has a lot to do with truly believing that you have been forgiven, that you have received mercy, and if you truly believe that, how can you withhold that from someone else?
Yes, if we need to truly believe that we've been forgiven, and that needs to be important to us, and then we need to realize that, and then when we have that outlook, we think about that, and we realize how sinful we are, we can forgive the people around us when they commit sins against us. Yeah. Verse 8, Matthew 5. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Okay, what is pure in heart? Pure in heart, O God, tell me to be. We sing songs about it. What is pure in heart?
A baby who hasn't been spoiled yet.
A baby who hasn't been spoiled yet.
Their heart
But they're not patient people, are they? They get hangry, like me. Yeah, okay, the pureness of a child who hasn't learned the ways of the world yet. Josh.
I once heard a preacher say that he asked somebody, if you could only have one of the Beatitudes, which one would you have? And they responded, I think it would be, Lord, make me pure in heart, because that one covers all the others. And I always remember that one. I think there's something to that. If you've got your heart in the right place, and it's pure, fully devoted to God, then all the others are there as well. So,
Yeah, it's almost kind of, different facets of the same diamond, right? Different threads in the same tapestry. Being pure in heart. You mentioned David as being someone who was meek earlier, Alan. Psalm 51:10. We are very familiar with this psalm, actually. We sing a song about creating me a clean heart, O God, or a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. David had just been convicted by Nathan the prophet of stealing someone's ewe lamb when he already had plenty of his own, right? He essentially had Uriah the Hittite, one of his mighty men, one of his most devoted warriors. He had him killed to cover up his sin of adultery with Bathsheba, Uriah's wife. And it isn't until Nathan the prophet comes and convicts him of this that he writes in verse 1, have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. And then down in verse 10, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. So we sing songs about this. But to be pure in heart is something that is core and foundational, like Josh says. Core. It's foundational. To be pure in heart. It's one of the things that if it's rooted in your life, then a lot of these other virtues that are talked about in the Bible happen, right? Core. C-O-R-E. C-O-R-E, yes. I can spell. Yeah. Essential. Blessed, go ahead, Alan.
About reference to metals and going through the refiner's fire to get rid of all the impurity.
Yeah, I'm not a metallurgist, but yeah, hearing that when we purify metals, we need to boil off some of the impurities that come to the top, like gold. And then you remove the dross, you skim it. Purifying. And sometimes that purifying process in our own lives is kind of hot, right? Some of the things we have to endure to get purer. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now so we can really look at cause and effect here, right? If you do this, then because you're doing this, this happens. What does that mean? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And why is that a blessing? I mean, we're told that every knee will bow and every tongue confess, whether you believe in him or not. There's going to be a day coming where everyone will see God. So what's this talking about?
Everyone will see the judge, but not everyone gets a good judgment.
Everyone will see the judge, but not everyone gets a favorable, a gracious judgment.
Some get to live and some get to go to torment. But everyone will see God.
Yeah, we want to be the people that see God and we see a huge smile on his face.
Yeah, don't think, and that's the way you're talking about that verse where people will not see God. He told Moses, go and drop the rock.
Mm-hmm. face to face, eye to eye.
Yeah, so that's kind of like affirmation that you become somebody who's pure in heart. That if you can see God, you've actually gone all the way to where He wants to be.
Yeah. Yeah, to be pure in heart, we will actually get to see God and have that that saved relationship that will be ultimately rewarded at judgment. The implication, the pure in heart will see God, and all will be well. Interesting thing about sermons, we need to wrap up, but something I've observed, and maybe you've observed this too, is that sermons like the one Thomas is going to preach in a few minutes, this sermon, timeless, Sermon on the Mount by Jesus, they're supposed to reinforce the right, to correct the wrong, and to evoke change where necessary. So we've been speaking about the Beatitudes, or the Be-attitudes, and the question for me, and maybe the question for you and for each other, is will we allow Jesus to change our attitudes to where we say, thy will be done, your will be done, Jesus, or is it going to be my will be done? Okay, that's it. Thank you all. It's been good to be with you.